Charity and Matty, it's so great to have you. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
So,
thanks for having us.
when we first got Arrow, which is just sunshine, it's just so wonderful. I just know this album's going to be great if that was our introduction. But after the first few times I heard it, I thought, this is a band who goes to therapy together. Well, and I know I'm being kind of playful here, but I mean it. You sound like you're feeling the feels and resolving to be positive. You're validating the fans' experiences in this sort of universal way. I talked to Jonathan like 3 years ago when Every Shade of Blue came out, and he said that the
Mm.
band was the strongest they'd ever been. It still
Mm.
seems to be the case, but Maddie, what would you say about how you're doing as a unit?
Yeah, if anything, I'd say that statement that John made 3 years ago is more true than ever before. I think we were coming out of the pandemic last time, and there was a lot of processing for everyone happening at that moment. And of course, we were doing therapy during that period as well and we've continued to do so. Just philosophically, the way we approached this record is probably the healthiest we've approached making records since the band's first album. It just kind of like it's an unfiltered version of ourselves and a lot more open-minded approach and a lot more like kind of collaborative in a really natural way, allowing the ebb and flow of input and creativity to kind of just happen. And so the record just kind of feels more like an accurate representation of the humans in the band than ever before.
Then Charity, along those lines, that leads me to the new record, Aperture, due out May 9th. It's self-produced, which basically means you're the boss, and that can mean a lot of things. What did that look like then this time around?
Yeah, well, very much so. Our first few records we did it not in the same way, but in the same way that they were self-produced. And it really was like getting us all in a room and hitting record, and making the arrangement calls in real time, just ourselves. As far as the production elements go, we were trying to keep everything as stripped back as we possibly could. So what does it sound like just to have six people in a room making music, and a lot of some of the tracks on Aperture are like initial takes live. And we tried to really kind of retain this, try and capture, it's an overused word, but capture the magic between the dynamic and chemistry of all of us. And you can really hear that in this record.
What we've heard so far is so big. It's interesting to hear that that the approach was kind of stripped back. Like it seems to me like these are just big songs that even when stripped back, they
Mm-hmm.
remain big.
I
Mm-hmm.
think
So,
there must, I think the caveat to all of this is that we've got, 15 years now under our belts making Head and the Heart music. And so there's a lot of the lessons we've learned along the way kind of have helped to develop the songwriting, like you mentioned, and also just the way that we like our understanding of how to have a song flow and feel big and anthemic in the right moments, but also like understanding like, oh, that doesn't mean you need to throw a million synth parts at it or overdub background vocals a million times. It's like there are other ways to achieve the desired outcome, and I think we were really sometimes painfully like aware of that and nitpicky about that this time around.
And
okay.
just to hop
Yeah.
on hop on that, it's like this band began because out from the Irish pub open mic, or playing, in the streets of Pike Place Market in Seattle, playing backyards, and just traveling with instruments on our back, or the voices that we travel with all the time, and it wasn't until we made a couple more records and then we could get into the studio and we could write in the studio. There's money then from a label and you can record, and so you're exploring the like musical space. But it's really like getting back to the genesis of this band, yet having gone through all the experiences of having more and realizing we're actually better with less,
Hmm,
you know?
that's nice. Um, Matty, I've read some quotes from you on the title of the album, Aperture, and how it's a way of choosing how much light you let in, finding a balance between, I don't know, maybe toxic positivity and on the other end, doom and gloom as the healthy unit that you are, that you just described of like-minded people. I mean, that obviously became an allegory for the music as you were making it. Was it something that you made a point to be conscious of, or did it just kind of happen that way? Did these themes just happen upon your creative process?
I think it's what you just mentioned. I think it's the first record, at least from my perspective, that we've made since having two children,
Mm,
and
that
that
changes things.
very much changes your understanding and the way that you interact with the world around you and the way that you see the long-term implications of your choices and your decisions and how that affects the burgeoning consciousness that you are cultivating in your child. And so there's a lot of big stuff that, like, whether or not you're like focusing on it minute by minute, it's infiltrating into the way that you think about the world and how you conduct yourself. And I think for me, for sure, that definitely seeped into the making of this record. You wanting to impart, deep internalized wisdom to a child, right? And so that's also getting tapped into. And a lot of times, I've been thinking about this too. You're reading a lot of like children's books in the process, and the lessons that you're learning in children's books are so universal and so real.
I
And I
feel
think
that.
a lot of that is seeped into the music as well, because it's just kind of like, yeah, the things, there's the Robert Fulghum novel, like everything. I learned everything I needed to know in kindergarten. I'm saying the title wrong, but that concept, all those basic concepts of life are there and contained. And so, yeah, I think that's a big part of why the album has the touches on on those subjects.
As a songwriter, I connect most to songs where I feel the songwriter is connected to themselves and connected to those that they're making the music with. And I think that is their nirvana of, and one of the hardest things to be in a group, to kind of achieve. And we definitely, this album is the first since the beginning in my mind of finally getting there. And you can hear that and feel that honesty and truth and reflection of how, of life.
Well, I can't wait to hear the rest then. Matty, real quick, you're giving $1 from every ticket sold on this upcoming tour, the Aperture Tour, to your Rivers and Roads Foundation, which helps out music education programs and mental health services for musicians back home in Seattle, which I think is great. So what have some of the most tangible ways the Rivers and Roads Foundation has made this kind of impact?
Yeah, well, we're lucky to be from a city that has a ton of different nonprofit organizations that are benefiting the youth of Seattle in so many different ways, and aspiring musicians and also established musicians. And so, we've been able to make donations to Seattle musicians access to sustainable health care, which is SMASH for short. It's similar to Music Cares in that it provides funds to help working musicians through medical hardships. We've worked with Arts Corps and who else? Black Fred,
and even like a community school in a neighborhood called West Seattle. Helping with a single donation, kind of saved their music program for the early elementary. And that's really the way, like, just one thing to add, that's the way to kind of move away from the darkness that surrounds, is really pouring into your local community, and activating everyone.
Mm-hmm.
It's true. Yeah. I mean, it goes back to the initial thing. It's why we do music in the first place. And touching back on the album theme of, like you said, toxic positivity versus what was your other thing?
Yeah, doom and gloom on the other
Doom and
end of
gloom.
the
Yes,
spectrum.
exactly. I mean, it's they're all there at all times. And the way I've always been able to navigate it, the way all of us have been able to navigate it, is through music. It helps provide that reinterpretation and reassembly of your concept of the world, and it helps just on a visceral emotional level. And so that helping to continue to sustain that and encourage that and foster that in whatever ways we can, for the next generation. That's everything, because it was everything for us.
I look forward to hearing about the amount of good that the Aperture Tour does. Again, $1 from every ticket going to the Rivers and Roads Foundation. And the Head and the Heart will bring that tour to Everwise Amphitheater at White River State Park on August 6th. The album's out May 9th. Charity and Matty, thank you so much for your time. This was great.
Thank you for your
great talking to you. Yeah, thank you.
Can't wait to get back.
Yeah.